Knights versus Knots Part 2 in the 2024 Spring Game, and we learned just a little bit about what we can expect in the fall. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Charge On. As always, I'm your host, Sean Green. Before we get started, as always, a quick word from our sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We also have another great sponsor, Cut. I love betting my friends and betting them on anything. Sports games, who's fast, that's what Cut allows me to do. The Cut app is a peer-to-peer social betting platform that's legal in 40-plus states. Cut has customizable odds, tracking capabilities, and an entire social network with group chats, user profiles, and rewards. All payments, no need for Venmo. Use our promo code BelieveUCF for a 10% welcome deposit bonus. Don't forget that promo code. Cut, put your money where your mouth is. I am in FBC Mortgage Stadium. I'm doing this, and there's going to be a space shuttle launch in about 2 minutes. So I get to experience that here. This is a great start to this pod. Everybody's counting down outside of me. So maybe I should have waited until after this launch, and maybe I should just set you guys up to watch this launch because I get a perfect view, but a great view of the stadium after the 2024 Spring Game. And listen, I went on 96.9 earlier today with Brandon Kravitz, and he asked me, what can you really take away from spring games? They're a glorified scrimmage, and it's not even really a scrimmage when you really think about it, right? Because when you think about it, it's, you're not really going 100%. You're not even playing a full game. Like, you're only playing 2 quarters. What can you really learn? And I agree with that sentiment, right? You can really look at this game and say, okay, you go out there, the defense and offense knows kind of what each other runs. You can kind of see certain plays that, pop your eye, or certain players that pop your eye. But the spring game is really just to garner some excitement for fans for the fall, but also for these players who have gone through 14 practices in the spring to really show what they've done and kind of cap off the spring on a positive note. Now, with that being said, are we still going to talk about certain players, certain plays that excited us or get us a little excited? Absolutely. I think I have a list of players that made me or got me excited that I said, that really popped off the page. So we'll go through those. I first want to talk about, if I can even see the final score, I've got stats here. Again, this is going to be a very interesting podcast because not in the normal setup. Again, here covering the spring game. But I think the Knots won 20-3, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 20-3, Knots win. Obviously, the Knots were the KJ Jefferson offense. Now, I will say, and I might have missaw this, but if I'm not mistaken, I don't think KJ Jefferson and that offense win against the number one defense. Maybe it was the first drive they went against them, but I can't remember a time where the number one offense and the number one defense win at it. Now, what I will say, and we'll talk about the defense a little here in a second, but offensively, again, I'm going to be completely honest. It's Gus Malzahn. It looked like a Gus Malzahn offense. There's no year 4 into Gus. I think watching the spring game, it was basically what we know we're going to see. A lot of lateral passes. Now, what I will say is we can talk about KJ Jefferson here. KJ went, and again, we have stats for this game. Again, they're not really, it doesn't really matter, but he went 12 of 22 for 271 yards and 2 touchdowns. What I will say about KJ, number one, can't really go live. He did run a couple times, which I found very interesting since he hadn't been live throughout spring. So for him to go live today, I felt he wasn't live, but for him to run like he did, I was a little shocked. I didn't think he would get out of the pocket at all today, but I think most of the times that a play would break down, there were times he got sacked. He got sacked 4 times. Some people in the post game were kind of like, well, the offensive line, you could kind of see some problems there. I think a lot of those issues would get solved by just KJ running out of the pocket a lot of the times. I think KJ's ball looks really good. His short, intermediate throws are on point. They're crisp. And I think and again, I don't like to compare John Rice Plumlee to KJ, because I think we're talking about, no offense, 2 different quarterbacks, in my opinion. Obviously, KJ's been an SEC starter for years. John Rice started in the SEC, but I think he had to really work on his throwing mechanics for, the good 2 years here. I think you are watching KJ, and those throwing mechanics are already kind of instilled, right? You already see those throwing mechanics when he's out on the field, especially in those short intermediate routes. Now, on the deep throws, again, you can, if you're really nitpicking, you could say, okay, some of the deep throws were a little off. But again, it's a spring game. I'm not really looking too deep into that. I think overall it was a good performance from KJ. They scored points. We liked what we saw. It's really hard to take what we can really like out of the spring game. And again, I'll go through my top guys that I was really impressed with in a second. But, defense, I will say this defense, I don't want to say reminds me a lot of Travis Williams, but they are very aggressive. This defense is extremely aggressive. They send a lot of blitz. They send a lot of corner blitzes sometimes. They send a lot of guys off the edge. They really are going to make the quarterback know what's going on. Now, with that being said, and again, this is months leading up, and we don't know who's going to leave or whatever, but teams will, in the fall, if you're doing what this team was doing, teams are really going to, I don't want to say pick apart, because again, I think UCF is going to have a lot of chances to get turnovers. I think UCF is going to have many opportunities to do that. With that being said, do I think that, this defense looked perfect? No. I think the run game, if I'm looking at the running stats, and again, it's spring game. Miles Montgomery had 5 for 34. Johnny Richardson had 4 for 31. And again, I don't know if and then let me look at the other rushing stats. Timmy McClain had 7 for 67, and I'll talk about Timmy McClain. But again, I don't want to come off on this pod. And again, this is all just coming to me at once, right? I didn't prep too much. I just watched the game, and I'm coming off the dome here. But again, we can't take so much out of the spring game. We can't. I want to make that very clear. All I am saying is the defense, I think, is the most thing we could take away from. The defense, they're going to be aggressive. They're going to send a lot of blitzes. They're going to switch it up, which I think is needed for this UCF defense. I think I got my point across there. Sorry, it took me a little to get there. But I like what I see out of the defense. I'm just saying, if this is going to be how the defense is, right, then hopefully in the fall they can really make sure they're finding ways. Because there was a couple balls where the defense got a lot of pressure, and we still completed a ball, and it went for a first down. So it's just making sure they continuously get better, but I like what I see out of the defense so far. Let's talk some of the players let me just talk about Timmy McClain for 2 seconds. Timmy McClain looks like Timmy McClain. I'm going to be honest. I mean, Dylan Risk, he looked a little rough when he had his chances, but again, to be completely honest, it's really tough because those guys, the Timmy McClains, the Dylan Risk, the Riley Trujillos, they were going against the number 1 defense the entire night. Again, the Knights only had 3 points. That was the second team offense, basically, second and third team offense, going up against the number 1 defense for this team. And to be completely frank, the number 1 defense looked dominant. The defensive line looked dominant. They were getting pressure almost every single snap. And really, the Knights didn't honestly have much offense. I mean, they had 12 minutes of possession time. They had 37 or 94 yards of total offense. So, I kind of feel bad because a lot of the guys on the second and third team were the younger guys that we kind of wanted to see, and we kind of wanted to get a feel for, how they are. We didn't really get to see it because they really didn't have a lot of offense. I mean, their leading receiver was Andrew Dixon, one catch for 18 yards. That was it. Again, running the football, Timmy McClain did really well, 7 for 67. But again, you see some of those errant things where he gets out of the pocket, tries to make a play, and almost gets picked off. So didn't see a whole lot of difference out of Timmy McClain, which is what I was trying to get to. That, listen, it doesn't really matter. This is KJ Jefferson's team, but you do have to look at the next backups and saying, listen, if a backup's going to have to come in and it's going to be Timmy, as of right now in spring 2024, I don't see much of a difference. It's very much similar to what we were seeing. And again, it's the spring game. I'm just saying from what we saw, it looked very Timmy McClain 2023-esque, right? All right. Let's talk about some of the people that I found and the Magic are going to lose. See, this is great. This is so good. Now, for those of you who don't follow Magic basketball now, if the Magic do not win on Sunday, they are going to be playing in the play-in. So that's fun. This pod is everywhere. And, it's okay. It's 9:30. Saw a space launcher. I don't even know. I didn't see the space launch, so I don't know if that thing happened. But, all right. People that impressed me. Number one, Chasen Johnson. We've been hearing Chasen's name for the entire spring. The entire spring, whenever we ask players, who's impressed you, who stands out, Chasen Johnson's name would come up. Now, again, you take everything with a grain of salt until you see it. We knew that Chasen was making a name for himself because every single player would mention him. So it's like, okay, Chasen is doing something right. And if I have a stat line here, I mean, Chasen Johnson, I think it says he had 2 total tackles. If he only had 2 total tackles, then they were 2 really good tackles. One came off the edge. He stopped a running back from making a huge play and saw him behind the line. He just looked really, really good. And I would not be shocked if he is starting from day one. I know that is, again, this is the overreact spring, but you can't overreact. I'm taking from whatever the players are saying to what I just saw on the field. I can see what players are seeing, and I think Gus Malzahn is seeing the same thing. So it would not shock me. He's been playing with the 1s and 2s all spring. It would not shock me if he sees a lot of playing time this season at all. Obviously, Xavier Townsend. I mean, again, we talked about it, I think, a couple weeks ago on the pod, how this is going to be really Kobe being limited in spring. He kind of got nicked up early in spring. Kobe being nicked up is going to help Xavier Townsend and KJ really find that rhythm between them two. And I think moving X out to the outside is also going to really help. You just see, I think he had 100 yards receiving today on, I think, 3 or 6 catches for 100 yards. Getting him out to the outside might actually be a benefit. You're giving him more room to work out to in. So I really liked what I saw out of X. And again, I think he's primed for a huge bump in production, which I think he's desperately needed. But he impressed me. Again, not a shock there, though. Brian Threats, again, the Cincinnati transfer. We've heard so much about he hits hard. He flies to the ball. We saw that a lot tonight. I think he led the team in total tackles, led everybody. 5 total tackles, had half a sack. He looked really good. I mean, he looked, and again, I want to keep re-emphasizing, it's spring. A lot can happen. A lot can change. This was one game, and we can only see what we see in practice and ask, but Brian Threats looked really good, and I think he can make an immediate impact. Ladarius Tennyson, another guy that, transfer Ole Miss, He was around the ball a lot tonight. He's in a position battle with Braden Marshall. So again, those guys are going at it, trying to get playing time. I think both of them get on the field, but I think Ladarius Tennyson looked really good tonight. Jared Baker, again, a guy that has been on the UCF roster for years, hasn't really stepped up and he dealt with injuries, hasn't really broken into the rotation. He broke a long one today. The speed is killer for him. I think, again, we've been talking about that third wide receiver is really the question mark. Who's going to be that third guy, right? He's in the running. He is right there. I think he gives them an element that they need, which they already have with Kobe and X, but I think another speed guy like that, I think he can really help this offense when it comes down to it. Andrew Harris, linebacker, obviously in his second year, only really played special teams last year. He looked really good. Again, I'm really looking at the linebackers. I was not impressed. I was really impressed with Andrew. I was not impressed. I'm blanking on a name. Again, a lot of names to think about tonight. And again, I'm blocking your guys' view. Who was I not impressed with? Ethan Barr. Ethan Barr, again, it's spring ball, but Ethan Barr, I felt, was a little slow on a couple of the plays there. But I really liked what Andrew Harris did. And Josiah Pierre was also really good. So a couple linebackers there that really impressed me. Miles Montgomery, coming in, going to be the third back. I am running through these names. So I hope, again, if you're UCF fans, you're keeping up. I'm trying to keep it short and sweet. We'll talk more with Nick next week about, the offseason and, transfer portal. But Miles Montgomery, again, coming in, going to be probably the third back, but I think can really help them. Again, the depth is going to be huge. And I think he's clearly a depth piece, but a guy that will get on the field. RJ Harvey, you have Johnny, but I think Miles brings an element of both a little bit. Again, can be power, but can also be speed. So I liked what I saw out of him. And then finally, Caven Call. He was getting runs with the ones tonight, and I think he looked really good, got a sack. I think we heard a lot. Caven Call Chasen Johnson is getting the Caven Call syndrome. We heard a lot about Caven Call last spring and last fall. Didn't really play a lot, but he still got some time. Caven Call was getting runs with the ones today, and I was really impressed with him. I think he's going to really be able to help UCF, and it's really good to see some of these younger guys get the opportunity to go out there, make a name, and potentially play early. And I think that's why you come to UCF as a top guy or a recruit. You come and you battle it out, and the coaches give the opportunities to the guys that play. Like Jason Johnson will get an opportunity to play. If he plays how he did in spring and fall, he's going to be out on the field. So all in all, it was a great night. The after festivities, I know Johnny won the fastest man and RJ Harvey, which RJ Harvey threw in the strongest arm or whatever. I'm going to be honest. I don't think RJ Harvey should have been able to participate in that. Everybody was acting like they were so surprised. Now, granted, he did throw a 68-yard ball. So, credit to RJ Harvey. But he also was a quarterback. So, he got recruited to go to Virginia to play quarterback. So, I'm like, did we really include RJ Harvey in the longest throw competition? But, it was a fun event, fun spring game as always. Now it's the long off season. But it doesn't stop for UCF. We've got a lot of recruiting. I think Monday is when the transfer portal opens. I don't expect UCF to lose many guys. We'll see who kind of enters the portal. There's going to be one or two, obviously, that you just are like, oh, wow, okay, he entered the portal. That's the new age college football. But it'll be interesting to see around the country who enters. But I think UCF, for the most part, will keep a majority of their roster, which is always good whenever the portal opens up to keep the guys that you have on roster. All in all, I think it was a really good the team was great. I was excited to see the team. I think for the most part, we got what we wanted, and I hope the fans here enjoyed it as much as we did. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Charge On. Again, sorry if it's all over the place. This one, trying to get out of here. Don't want to keep the staff here waiting on me to do this pod. But again, if you couldn't make it out to the spring game, I hope that this can shed a little light on, who's good, who's bad. But I want to make it very clear, like I said, it doesn't really matter. Like, at the end of the day, it's going to matter when we get to fall camp, what we hear out of fall camp, who plays and who doesn't. Spring game is really, again, just more of a celebration of finishing out spring. I know they're going to have team meetings or one-on-ones beginning of next week, so I think a lot of players will really find their standing for the most part beginning of next week. So that's going to do it. Again, I'm sorry if it was all over the place. I appreciate you guys. Please like, follow, subscribe, share, do all that you do. We greatly appreciate it. Please follow me on Twitter at Sean M.R. Green for all your UCF Orlando Magic news. We'll be posting updates on there all the time. And please, again, subscribe here and subscribe to the Zone Heads Orlando podcast. I do that every Tuesday, and we talk all things UCF. Everybody, this has been Charge On, presented by Bet Online. We will see you next week.